Hello and welcome to Spirit Pig. This is the show that explores how to live a fulfilled life. I'm Duncan CJ and today I'm talking to Nick Birkett. Nick is the co-owner of London-based Mexican restaurant group Poncho 8. Since launching with one shop in 2009, Poncho 8 has grown and grown at an amazing speed, earning the title of Best Burrito in London by the Evening Standard. Nick has been featured in numerous media publications and was recently invited to share the stage with Sir Richard Branson to talk about entrepreneurship. In this chat, we cover a lot of ground, but some of the highlights are Nick's views on altruism, the importance and power of simplicity, the benefits of a morning routine, why having emotional intelligence is so important, and how the belief that everything will be all right in the end influences his decisions and his life. Coming up right now in Spirit Pig. Enjoy. Thank you so much, Nick, for being here. It's awesome to have you.
No worries, dude. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you. Now, I just gave everyone a little intro about, a little bit about you, but right now, like, in a couple of sentences, like, what's going on? Tell me a little bit about you.
So we've been running a business called Poncho 8 for the past 5 years. We built up a chain of 6 burrito stores. We're opening 2 more in early 2015. And we've actually just put a new management team in to run it. And my business partner and I are going to set up a new pizza concept, which should open 1st of June next year is the plan.
Oh, amazing.
So,
Nick,
all food.
Exactly, and Nick, he's quite a modest guy. I mean, I would describe you as a sort of like serial entrepreneur. Every single time we have a chat, he's got another sort of app development idea or another like concept, and he's constantly like creating. And I think that's it's amazing. Like every time I talk to you, it's infectious. So, but
you're very kind.
take it back a little bit. Like you used to work for BlackRock, didn't you? You were like an investment analyst.
I was, yeah.
But what that's quite a big change from suddenly, having a pretty sort of good, well-paid, secure job and then suddenly throwing it all in. What made you leave the corporate world?
Well, I think I went to uni in Edinburgh, and then, like most people, you kind of fall into a job. You're presented with kind of 4 options, I guess, kind of law, accountancy, banking of some description, and then something else that's fairly mainstream as well. And then went to one of those milk round events and got talking to someone who was on a stand, and then ended up applying for BlackRock as the first place I applied to and got in. So I thought it was the dogs, and then got there and thought, wow, this is not for me at all. So actually, it was on my first day I spoke to my mentor, and she said, how long have you wanted to work here? And I said, to be honest, I really don't want to work here at all. I want to go and work in food. And it just came out, and I said, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I said that. Like, are you going to fire me? And she said, no, it's really interesting you said that because I've always wanted to go and start a bakery. So first meeting I ever had at BlackRock was we talked about food. And then over the course of 18 months when I was there, we had these meetings every week, and she'd talk about bakery and I'd talk about other food ideas that we were looking at. And eventually I didn't have like something specific I was going to go and do. I just knew it wasn't BlackRock. So I left and got in touch with every kind of vaguely entrepreneurial person I'd met and said, look, can I work with you? And the 2 guys I ended up working with, one had started the Sanctuary in Covent Garden, so worked with him. In cosmetics, which ended up not being for me at all. And then the second guy had set up a bakery, so I worked with him for a bit. And then that ended up with us having a shop in St Paul's that we didn't take. So I got in touch with this guy, Frank Young, who I'd met a few years before, and then ended up investing in his business, Poncho 8, and then we opened the second Poncho together in 2010, I think. So yeah, it was like, as ever with these things, you kind of fall into it, but I think it was always going to be food. It was just which bit of food that it was going to be. And I think now we almost on a daily basis have calls or emails from friends or friends of friends who want to get into food, but they're not sure whether they want to do retail or they want to do wholesale or they want to do a product or restaurant or what have you. And yeah, for me, it was just a case of jump into something that was in vaguely food, and then you kind of work your way into the bit that you like best.
Fantastic. And did you always have this sort of, like, since you were young, like this sort of entrepreneurial sort of thing, or did it come later on in life? Did you always know that you weren't going to go down that sort of traditional route? I mean, you obviously said you did. You went into it for a little bit, but did you always know that wasn't right, or?
No, definitely not. I think that what do I think about that? My family have always been in like normal jobs, so doctors, lawyers, etc. So I was always wanting to be a barrister when I was younger. And for various reasons that didn't happen. And then I think, to be honest, I was always one of those guys that felt that entrepreneurs were kind of super confident, nothing would knock them ever. They had an idea every 15 minutes and they were always talking to investors and getting more and more cash. And that kind of, I think, probably put me off more than anything else. But I think just having kind of fallen into a food opportunity, and then as you surround yourself with creative people, then you get an opportunity to be progressively more creative. I think then that just develops and develops. And I still don't think we're terribly good entrepreneurs. I just think we get excited about a lot of stuff, and I think that we like to surround ourselves with people that excite us, and get rid of people who don't excite us, and distance ourselves from those that don't. And I think that, yeah, I think I was having a conversation yesterday with a really good mate, and he was saying, can I pick your brain for 5 minutes? I really want to go and do my own thing. But you can see he was really kind of nervous about it. He was saying, I had this idea, but I'm not quite sure. And, as you can tell by his body language, he was really, like, normally he's a very confident guy, but you could tell he was struggling with it. And I think that transition from being in that guy's position, so he's in a normal job, as it were, and wanting to go and do his own thing is the hardest one, because as soon as you've done it, and even if you fail, you can tell when someone's jumped and they've got that confidence as to say, yeah, I did it, like I had a crack at it. So yeah, for all the people that you speak to who are like that, I think that's the hardest jump to make.
And I think that's what you were saying there about somebody who says, "Oh, can I just pick your brains for like 5 minutes?" I don't know. What I was going to ask you, because this is actually something I genuinely wanted to ask, is ever since that we've known each other, you have this sort of like altruistic kind of thing, like where you're constantly asking, like, how can I help? How can I help? Or like, who can I put you in touch with? And like, is that just you? Is that just your character, or have you like had the benefit of sort of mentors when you were starting out, and so it's almost like a pay it forward, or where is that? Because you said you surround yourself by like-minded people, and you're constantly like we've gone to a couple of sort of meetups, and the people in the room, it's amazing. Like everyone is from sort of doing different crazy things, but everyone is just sharing ideas, talking about like marketing, talking about what they're doing with some branding, and it's this amazing sort of mastermind sort of collection of people. Like I don't know if that was just because you sort of just started something new, giving me a helping hand and just trying to be helpful, or if that's just a sort of in that environment. Have you found that everyone is very sort of helpful and looking out for each other? Or
I guess two things that popped into my mind when you said that. One is that I think as you get older, you get more cynical, and I think that in the last few months we've experienced some people who weren't like that, and it made us realize even more that we didn't want to be like that. And I think that sometimes, or very often, the most successful people are those who are most willing to help. Now, I don't know whether they become successful because they're like that, or they're like that because they're successful and they like sharing their stories. But for me, there's always a karma thing about it. Like you help others, and others will help you. And I also think it's just kind of the future. Like in the same way that companies have to treat their staff better, so that people will stay for longer, because people are just becoming more and more transient, is one thing. And I think that with that kind of goes this sharing mentality. So there's a huge culture about startups at the moment, as you're fully aware. And a lot of people talk rubbish, and there are a really good nugget of people who talk sense. And I think once you find people who you think talk sense, then they'll probably have friends who talk sense as well. And I think that if you create yourself as one of those people who puts people in touch, then it's easier for you to get in touch with people once you need help as well. And I think the way that we've helped people has changed, as in we used to say, we'll do whatever we want whenever we can and give you as much time. And I think that now we're probably a little bit more practical about it. So if you get introduced to someone cold, then we'll say, let's have a phone call first, rather than going to meet them and then putting them in touch after they've kind of qualified themselves in a way, because you do get a lot of people who time waste and just kind of call up and say, oh, I want to do this, and they have like 65 ideas, but they're never going to do anything, and you kind of need to get them to prove to you that they're going to commit to it in some way.
By doing that, you're helping them as well, because it's by making them actually go over a couple of hurdles first. Then by the time they get to you, then it's actually they've maybe thought out their ideas a bit more as well, and
definitely. Like I couldn't agree more. And I think that you can tell almost immediately whether someone has like read an article about someone and kind of wants to be them, but it's pretty transient, versus the kind of people like you who've got like a crazy energy. Not quite sure necessarily where you want to go, but it's kind of like, right, I'm going to do something by myself, and I'm going to work my ass off to get to the next stage. And the next stage might be interviewing people like this online, or it might be like you running some new massive company in Silicon Valley. But it doesn't really matter, as long as like that they're going to work their nuts off, and they're going to put energy into it, basically.
Oh, amazing. What today? Like, what's your like motivation today? Like, why do you do? I mean, I know you've said you wanted to be in food, and you've got I know that there's a couple other things you got in the pipeline which you haven't mentioned. But like, why do you do what you do? Like, is it just you love you love the thrill of the business, or you're trying to create like, your vision boarding, you got like a dream, or like what's your motivation?
I think my answer to that used to be money, and I think now, I think we've realised this year that it's really not. Obviously, money is part of it, but I think that we've become, as we'll say, it's Frank and I basically do everything together. We've become really, really good mates, if not best mates, over the last few years. I think we've become much more visual about things, much more and design led as well. So for me, I really want to create something that is very well designed, be that a physical thing and the company structure as well. And also, I think once you've created something and you can employ people, it's the most awesome feeling. Because you see that journey from, we had an idea in a restaurant on Bermondsey Street to let's sketch out a business plan on the park bench outside that restaurant to, then you have an offer of money for, a crazy valuation that you think is what you think is absolutely on point, but other people will say, no, that's huge, that's huge. And it's that like kind of seat of your pants, go from an idea to fruition is just the most incredible journey. And I think once you've had that, then it's really, really tough to go back to kind of being employed as you were. But I mean, having said that, I do think that in many of these kind of interviews that you see in these kind of startup discussions, I think that too many people in our position kind of almost talk negatively about, I've kept saying normal jobs earlier in this chat, or, kind of talking negatively about being employed. And I do think that's a mistake, because I think for certain people, they love that and they really thrive from that. And I think that, we've had mates who have run their own companies and, got pissed off with all of the HR stuff and all the paperwork and all of the kind of over stress that you have to go through and you don't sleep for a few weeks. But, if you find the right position and you can be employed and you just look after, the design of everything in the company, that would be an awesome thing to do as well, I think. But I think for right now, what we're doing is absolutely right for us, and it gives us that scope to create, get involved with the finance and the design and all bits of it. And I think while we're kind of young and have got a load of energy, that's exactly where we want to be.
Amazing. And I know you were saying both the design in terms of like the structure, but also I know that you guys with Poncho 8 and actually a lot of the stuff you do, you keep sort of you're very interested in actual the design, sort of the aesthetics of the experience of actually your shops, the interiors. I know that you I was reading, I'll put it in the show notes. There's an interview on Virgin Startup, and you're talking about how you love like sort of Apple products and their sort of ethos. I mean, you try to like sort of take some of that, that some of the ethos and then brought it into your own businesses?
Yeah, I think, again, when you're asked these questions, you cite these like ludicrously big companies that really inspire you. And I think, I think it's true. I think it sounds ludicrous because they're so far removed from where we are right now. But again, in the same way that, these businesses go from idea to fruition pretty quickly, I don't see any reason why we can't be inspired by those kind of companies and kind of bring it into what we're creating. So, now we used to get other people to design the restaurants. Now, we've basically designed the next restaurant ourselves, and it's, from the kind of materials to how those materials are finished to the position and how many chairs and the height of the chairs relative to the table and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, and I guess that's taken from, looking at products like Apple products, for example. You look at it and they're just so well designed and so well made. And we just hold more and more a fundamental belief that if you design something well, it really kind of conquers all kind of potential flaws in its use. And I also think that people, even if you don't appreciate consciously design, even if you don't consciously appreciate design, rather, you do appreciate it subconsciously, which is why the best designed products. I was reading about paperclips, for example, yesterday, and the history of a paperclip. Like, there's so many iterations that went into the first paperclip, and now the one that we've got left is, or the most commonly used, is kind of super flat, so it doesn't intrude on the rest of the papers, and it bends in just the right way, and it's shaped in a way that really works with a kind of thick mound or a small mound of paper, and all those kind of things are what we kind of draw inspiration from and kind of throughout the day and kind of affect every choice we make in the business, right?
I love that. I wasn't expecting your reference to be a paperclip, but I think that's, if you can tie it back, if you can bring it back to something as simple as a paperclip, then I love that.
I mean, simplicity has to be one of the main ways that we're going to go forward. I think because there's so much information around it, because you're as we all know, we're battered by information all the time. I think that a brand that can do simplicity, certainly in the near future, is going to be one that succeeds. So for whatever we do next, and I hope it's this pizza business, we're going to make it as simple as possible, because it just becomes more relaxing then. And I think also in making it simple, then your customers trust you more because if you go and buy an Apple computer, you have like three choices. If you go and buy a Dell computer, you have like 50 choices on each part of the computer, right? For me personally, that just leads to a lack of trust, and also that kind of awful feeling like, it's like when you go to a restaurant, there's so much choice, and you've got like a super good steak, and I've got like a really weird vegetarian thing. I'm like, why did I go for this? I just wanted like
a steak. Food envy.
There's two choices of like sauce for the steak and just the steak. It's that kind of simplicity that I think we're trying to build into whatever we're doing now.
I like that, and that kind of ties into. I was gonna ask you because I know that you have a morning routine which you do every day. Like you stretch, you meditate, you set your goals, and this idea of like simplicity and like I know you meditate. You kind of quite zen. Like I don't know, isn't it this idea of just like less is more? So you just actually cut back like the superfluous stuff, and then just bring things back to the basics almost.
Yeah, I think.
Why do you meditate?
Because my mind's always full of thought, and I think that in what we do specifically, because we want to be very successful in fast casual food and in food more generally, there has to be an incredible attention to detail, and I think that's the case in loads of other businesses too. But I think specifically in restaurants, because people are so critical about restaurants, because everyone thinks they are a restaurant critic because they've seen so many TV programs, then you have to think about how does this marble appear in front of me, and how thick is it, and how wide does it need to be, and what's the depth between the chair top and the top of the table. Like, if you're thinking about those kind of details the whole time, then your mind is full of thought the whole time, and that then leads to kind of what are you inspired by. So yesterday I was at a market around the corner from my house, and I saw this massive copper bath, which would look incredible in our new restaurant. So I was kind of going in, looking at the thickness of it, and then if it's that thick, how long is it going to last? And then kind of the heat of the water, and there were certain bits that would transmit heat, and certain bits that weren't copper and wouldn't, and kind of all these kind of thoughts are going through your mind. And I guess the reason I'm saying that is because, in relation to your question, things like a couple of minutes meditation in the morning kind of help you chill out a bit, because I think there's a danger if you've got the kind of mind that I've just outlined, that you get a bit too involved in the detail, that you start kind of over processing a bit. So yeah, for me, it's just a few minutes in the morning, and then the stretching thing, I guess, is just to kind of unwind the body a bit, and then that then goes into a run. So, and I also think that I used to think that doing something different every morning was quite healthy, but actually I think to wake up and to do the same routine, even if it's just for a few minutes, so it's meditate, stretch, and then plan the day, I think is a really healthy way of doing it, because I think it gives you that consistency that actually is a positive thing. I then think for the rest of the day, then obviously every day is different, so that's where the kind of the difference comes in. But yeah, for me, it's keeping the morning bit the same.
So you can decide every single morning it just starts in the right note, and then then the craziness of the rest of the day, then sure, that unfolds, but you decide how it starts.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes for food too, actually, now. So I used to have something different every morning for breakfast, but now it's like, right, this works for me, I'm going to start with this. Because then you've got like the right energy, the right balance of kind of the foods that you should have.
What is the food? What do you go for?
Now I'm going for, I have whole wheat muffins, 2 eggs, 2 ham, and then normally barbecue sauce, which is homemade. So something like that.
I wasn't expecting that.
That's the carrot one.
Another thing, you talk about the importance of, and I'd just like you maybe just to elaborate on it, like the importance of emotional intelligence and how that's such a key thing amongst your team, because you have many people in your business. And could you maybe just explain to me and explain to our listeners a little bit, like why is emotional intelligence so important, and what do you mean by emotional intelligence?
So I understand by emotional intelligence, that for me means basically reading other people. And I think that comes through kind of body language, it comes through email tone, it comes through text tone, it comes through the way that people choose to interact. And I think in what we're trying to do, so as a kind of entrepreneur in inverted commas, so we're trying to be successful in food, we're trying to be successful in other industries as well. And you just have to read people across all those industries, and then you go from pitching to investors. So you've got to be reading that this guy's in a suit, and is he in a really expensive suit, and who's he just seen, and then how's he reacting to the last meeting, and then what's he thinking about next, and then have I got 5 minutes, because he said I've got 5 minutes, but we had a meeting the other day where we said we had 5 minutes and we were there 2 hours later. And kind of, I guess, just analyzing every single, again, it comes down to detail, I guess, of how people are behaving, and then speaking, I guess, commercially, how can you use that to best benefit you and your company, is I guess that's more towards investors. And then that comes down to the guy who washes up in the poncho St. Paul's is a Bangladeshi guy who's just the most charming guy in the world, and he would always appear happy. But you could tell some days that he wasn't quite right, and then you call him out and have a chat, and you find out something is wrong back home. And I think we aspire to be really, really good leaders, and some people will say we were, and some people will say we were absolutely horrendous, probably. But I think that to be a really good leader, then you have to have great emotional intelligence, so you can read across everyone in your organization, and you can read how people in other organizations relates to yours as well. So yeah, we focus a huge amount, not consciously, I guess. Like, we don't talk about emotional intelligence all the time, but I think we really take time to, if something's not going quite right, then we'll kind of call it out and say, look, let's have a chat. What's up? We don't kind of. Okay, so the best example, actually, sorry, I'm rambling, but the best example.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting because just
a Tuesday morning meeting every week, and a section we brought into that was called obstacles. Because we found that occasionally a couple of people in the meeting would kind of build up and build up and build up, and then after a few months they would say, this has really been pissing me off, and like, why have you done this, and why have you done this, and why have you done this? So that only became a big thing because they let it build up. So we said, look, if anything is an obstacle, even if it's like, I really don't like your grey and green shirt, Duncan, it doesn't work for me. And you wear it every Wednesday morning.
What? Like, I will especially. I was picking out things for about half an hour before the interview started.
Like, you have to come out with those things as soon as it becomes a problem, and you have to recognize that it's a problem, and that helps solve so many problems across the business. And that again was, I guess, emotional intelligence is particularly relevant in the restaurant industry because you have so many cultures in that industry, kind of by definition, because of the way the labor model works. So you have, we had kind of 15 different nationalities in one store, and the store was tiny, so they're together the whole time. So unless you really hammer at home that you guys have got to get on, and how do you guys get on, and then put exercises in places to, the best means of communication, and therefore improving emotional intelligence, then I think it's really hard to run a decent company.
No, that's fascinating. Thank you. And one thing which I heard you say when I keep on quoting you when, like, as if we had this conversation the other day, but I've been doing my little research. I was reading a couple of articles and reading some stuff, but it was actually like it's sort of an ethos which I also like try and live by, which I love. And you said, I think it was your mum, is giving you this advice, that everything will be all right, and just knowing that everything will be all right, and whatever I do, it might go it might go shit, it might not go that well, but at the end of the day, it's going to be all right. Do you feel that kind of that mentality has allowed has opened up what kind of freedoms has that given you in sort of like business and in life? Because I think we're constantly so worried about, messing up or things going wrong or rejection. Mm-hmm. Because you've got that mentality that, worst case scenario, you'll be able to, sort it out. Has that allowed you to take, more risks or?
Yeah, I think that we've become very data focused this year. And I guess it helps us make decisions in different ways. And I say that because generally, if you look at the data of your life, things tend to work out. Like, there've been huge times when you get really, really worried. Say, when you take your GCSEs or you take your A levels, like, those are the biggest things in the world for you at that time. If you look back at them now, you're like, God, what is this so worried about?
Sweating, like nervous.
Yeah, and like when we're 50 years old and we look back at now, you're like, God, you're really stressing about that deal. Why? It's a tiny, tiny deal. And I guess when you look at it like that, you say, well, and that coupled with an ability to be able to step back and analyze kind of third hand almost what you're going through and objectively. And you say, look, what's causing me stress here? It's this issue here. And then what can I do to solve this? And then am I worrying about things that I can't control? Yes. And then fundamentally, like, have these kind of decisions worked out in the end? Yeah. And then there are those times that you go through this kind of problems and I guess decision-making phases that you've never been through before. And then you kind of have to say with those, well, look, generally we've behaved well in the past and generally things have worked out. So I'm sure this will be exactly the same. And then I guess that coupled with, I was talking to a friend yesterday, we went out for lunch and we're both kind of, I think we call ourselves warriors, as I need to say, what about this, and what about that, what about this? And she just had this amazing moment. She was saying, like, I've just realized that it's really not worth spending all of the energy and effort worrying about stuff. So I'm just kind of relaxing about it. And she'll go through a phase, like she'll go through that and then she'll start worrying and then she'll, be back in the kind of relaxed phase again. But I think, I do think that lots of the kind of good entrepreneurs that we've met are very conscious of everything, and therefore they become warriors, whether whether kind of knowingly or not, you can see them kind of over processing stuff. So yeah, I think that ability just to go, everything's fine, and things will work out, which gives you that kind of a kind of little bit of a kind of seat of your pants mentality that I think you do need to have. And I think related to everything we've just talked about, I would say that you do need to have a business partner, because I think that, particularly related to this last point, a business partner helps you put things in perspective. And if you're stressing out and it's kind of got beyond your remit of I can control this and everything's going to be fine, then normally one of you kind of plays the savior and is like, look, dude, you'll be fine, and this is how we're going to work out together, and let's like do a structured plan rather than thinking it's just like a whole piece that we can't solve. But yeah, I do think you need to have that kind of everything's going to be fine if you're going to kind of take risks and set up new companies, definitely.
Oh, fantastic. I know I'm very conscious of time because I know we've only got a couple minutes left, but just maybe a couple of just speed round questions just to finish off.
Fine.
And this is one I've been asking to like most of the people I've talked to, but it's a little bit open ended, so you can cover. But what does a fulfilled life mean to you?
I turned 30 on Friday, was it? Friday, yeah. So, and then those are the kind of times in life where you go, Christ, what am I doing? And then what should I be focusing on for the next period of my life? And I think that I look back at the last few years and think I've worked a bit too hard, I think. And I think, so my focus for the next business in the next few years is which relates to what's a fulfilled life, I guess, is like a better mix of mates and family as well as work. Because I do think that certainly in our first business, we worked too hard. I think we worked inefficiently and too long and too hard. So therefore, I think, yeah, fulfilled life is kind of related to what we said at the beginning of the conversation. So helping others in the kind of sphere that you can help with, recognizing when you can't, spending a lot of time with mates, and kind of sharing what you're up to as well. And then fundamentally believing in yourself at what you're doing. And we've been told a lot recently that we're not very good at what we're doing and you can't do this and you can't do that, but we kind of blast through it and then we are doing it and we're going to do it even better next time. So yeah, I think a good mix of kind of believing in yourself and kind of pig-headedly going at that, alongside having that kind of modesty and kind of a bit of altruism as to helping others and kind of spending a lot of time with mates and family as well.
Fantastic.
I think.
And finally, what's one thing or one piece of advice that you think that our listeners could do today that will have a massive positive effect on their lives?
In terms of business or in terms of lives?
In terms of life, like be it meditation, be it that morning routine, be it doing one good thing for somebody else a day, or like what's one thing which either you've done or you've had experience doing that you think would have a great impact?
I think for me then it comes back to the kind of data point, and not data necessarily in the kind of matrix sense of the word where you've got streams of numbers, but very often when we've got people in the company who have been not at their best, normally when you sit them down and say what's the matter, then they can tell you what the matter is, and then if you say how you're going to solve that, they can tell you how you're going to solve it. But because they haven't kind of stepped back and realised that, then they kind of fret and get more and more negative about it. So I guess for anyone who's kind of watching and thinking I've got a problem, then rather than just kind of thinking I've got a problem, you think, right, what is the problem? Write it down on a piece of paper and then think, right, what's the best option I can think of in the next 10 minutes to fix that problem, and then doing it. And that relates, I guess, to the largest point actually that I was discussing with someone today, which was like when is the moment to jump, or when is the moment to start your new thing, or when is the moment to kind of implement that new decision you've been thinking about. We tend to do things now. So it's kind of, right, I've had an idea, let's do something about it now. So yeah, I guess that it's a combination of kind of doing it now, doing something now that can improve whatever it is you're worrying about, or whatever it is that can make your life even better than it is right now.
Yeah, and that action builds momentum and just, fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I think it really does. And that relates back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the chat, I think, about the energy thing. And about, when those people come to see you, as I'm sure they do with you too, it's kind of, you can tell if they've got that energy, then they're going to do something good, because they're going to have so much energy that are going to drive things so fast that even if they mess up the first and second and the third and the fourth, like their fifth thing is going to be flipping amazing. Yeah, so that's it, I think.
It's almost that blind naivety, like you almost, yes, you're so naive, but almost that naivety, like someone gets you over a couple of the hurdles.
Yeah, but everything's so kind of intertwined as well. Someone was talking to me about a new idea they wanted to do with kind of looking after their house, and he was kind of concerned that he'd spend too long on this, and if it didn't work out, then that would be it. But if you spend hours and hours and hours researching a business that's going to improve your house, then that is fundamentally linked to, I don't know, the new computer design or the new car design or the new way to get along the Thames or whatever it's going to be. Like all these things are so intertwined because fundamentally they have kind of humans behind them. And when you're researching businesses, it's normally fundamentally about researching how humans are going to interact with you as your customers. So yeah, I think all these things are interlinked, and they pretty much always come back to energy, confidence, and being positive about things.
Fantastic. And finally, how can people find out more about you? Like, can they connect with you? Like, where's the best place for us to send people?
Poncho8.com is the best burritos in London, so they should go there.
They've been voted by Evening Standard and lots of people as the best
so.
burrito in London.
Good
So
research.
there'll definitely be a link to that. Nick, thank you so much for giving up your evening. It's been fascinating talking to you, and it's it's been you've been so helpful and so inspiring for me. And thanks so much for just giving some more insights into a bit your business and your life. Really,
Lovely to talk to you.
This is your life with Nick Burkett.
Dude, well, nice to speak to you. We'll speak to you soon.
Thanks so much.